Hello world, my name is Klaus Hostel and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today's number 89 and today I'm going to talk about innovation readiness and I'm going to present what I call 3 basic stages of innovation readiness. Let's start with a quote. I'm sure you've heard something like this. We'd love to do things differently, but we're too busy. Not right now. Let's not rock the boat. Yes, it sounds great, but we don't have the time, resources, energy, etc. Let's look at it later. We've all heard this. We've all been there. We've all done this. This happens to all of us. It happens in our organization. It happens in our daily lives, whether it's getting in shape, eating more healthily, spending more time with your kids, spending more time without your kids, doing things at work differently. We've all been there. I'd love to, but not right now. So a note before I get started, this is the first time I'm using this yellow background, yellow color scheme. I'm not sure what I think about it. We'll see. It's a test. The challenge is most organizations actually aren't ready for innovation. What do I mean by that? Do I mean they don't need it? No. I mean they're not ready because they're not in the right place. There are 3 basic stages of readiness. Of course, it's more complex, but it can be boiled down to 3 basic stages. Stage number 1, you are desperate. You know that if you don't change, you're going over the cliff. Doesn't matter how big your organization is, doesn't matter how successful it has been in the past, you are at a place where you know, it's not going well, and if we don't change it, things are going to go really bad. This, in personal life, this is when your doctor says you need to stop eating red meat or you're going to die in a year. You need to quit smoking or lung cancer. You need to spend more time with your family or you're going to get divorced. It's these things where somebody says this is a loaded gun and it's pointed at you if you don't change. Desperation is great for innovation because once we're desperate, we're willing to try stuff. We're willing to, okay, you want us to show up in tiger costumes, boss? Yes, sir. Let's sell them burgers. Desperation is a great driver of innovation. One of the places where innovation happens is when we are desperate. The second place it happens is when we're invulnerable. It's when we're like, oh, we're Google. Let's spend $1 billion there and $1 billion there and $1 billion there. One of these ideas is going to work, and it's not like we're running out of money anytime soon because our core business is so bloody brilliant that we have enough of it. A feeling of invulnerability is a great driver of innovation as well. It's that couple you know who, they have 4 kids, they have great careers, they seem to love each other dearly, things are going well, and then when you meet them and you're struggling with your one kid and your terrible jobs and you're just trying to make ends meet, and they're like, oh, we just went to Costa Rica, just me and Henry, it was great, and we've taken up dancing on Thursdays just to try something new, and on one hand you're like, I hate you guys, I hate you, but you also envy them because they're invulnerable. They're at this place where they do stuff, they experiment, they're playful, they try things out. Invulnerability is another great innovation driver. However, there's the 3rd stage, the not right now stage. We know we need it. We know if we don't do something, things are going to go bad, but not right now. So if we visualize that, it looks a little bit like this. Imagine that this is the number of organizations out there, and this is some sort of curve. Now, this is, of course, not mathematically very precise. It's not based on a huge survey of thousands, but that doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. So here we have the desperate organizations. Actually, there are not that many that are desperate because usually they're not desperate for very long because either they get out of that, explode, or they just crumple and die. Here are the invulnerable companies. Not that many of them either because, again, staying at the top is really hard. Where the really big portion is in the not right now phase. And you'll notice that I've made this into a curve instead of just 3 points. The reason for this is that the not right now phase is pretty big. And it kind of has 2 extra nuances. The ones that are moving toward desperation. Okay, things aren't too bad now, but we can see which way they're going and we know we're going to be overtaken by new technology or competitors or trends are changing. We know that it's not bad now, but it's going to get bad and we see it coming. Or they're the ones where like, okay, we're moving forward. Things are getting better. We're climbing. Yes, we're not at an invulnerable space right now, but we're getting closer to it. We're starting to take chances. We're doing innovation cafes. We're doing experimental hubs. We're doing play your own Tuesdays, that sort of thing. You're doing small stuff, not huge stuff, but small stuff, because you're feeling, okay, we can take some risks here. One fun thing is if you look at a company and you ask their leadership, what is the largest amount of money that you could take and just throw it out the window? Maybe set it on fire first for a dramatic effect. And I remember in my company, my old company, I remember when that number was like 500 euros. We had no risk capital. And I remember later in the process when we had, well, let's just say we had quite a bit more. We were not at Google's billions, not in any way, but we had a lot more than 500 euros of risk capital because things were going, we were going the right way. We could take chances. If you don't take chances, you're not going to get anywhere. But what does that mean? How do you change that? How do you move on this spectrum? Well, first off, you can become desperate. This is something that has been advised by consultants for years and years. Create a burning platform. There's this beautiful, well, I'm not sure it's beautiful, but it's a classic historical example of the conquistadors. And one of them, it's Cortez. Cortez lands in Central America and says, guys, we're going to conquer. We're going to do this. And then some of them are like, okay, yeah, but we're like alone in a foreign country, boss, and we don't have that many people, and it's not like we are invulnerable. And he says, you know why we're going to win? Because I set the ships on fire. Okay, strong argument in your favor. So you say we need to win or we're not going home. You create desperation. Create that burning platform. This is done in many, many companies, many organizations throughout history. There's just one problem with that. It works. It really works. But it's desperate. It's exhausting. It is just, you can keep it up for some time, but it's exhausting. Then there's the second option. Become invulnerable. Yeah. It's just one problem. You can only try. You can't just decide to succeed. You can do things. You can try. You can use new techniques. You can use new processes. You can hire new people, new visions, new missions, all sorts of things, new partners. But you can only try. You can't guarantee it. So what I want to propose here is, what do? You take both sides of the coin. You create invulnerability and desperation at the same time. And to show what that looks like, I'm going to throw up a model here. It looks a little bit complex. It has like a million slides to go through it, but it's actually not that complex. So bear with me. Let's say this is the classic scenario. This is resources, and this is a line that I'm going to use for different units, different teams in the organization. And here are kind of layers, levels. These two are to delineate, or to show there's the difference between these three kind of bigger layers. One is the desperation zone. That's here at the bottom. That's when you have 0 to 2 points on this scale that I'm making up. The other is the invulnerability zone. This is if you have 9 or 10 points on it. And this is the too busy zone. This is everything else. This is 2 to 9. So if you have 0 to 2 points, you're in the desperation zone. If you have 2 to 9 points, you're in the too busy zone, either the higher end of it or the lower or comfortably in the middle. And if you have 9 or 10 points, then, or even more, 15, who cares? Then you're in the invulnerability zone. Then things are like, yeah, we can try stuff. So you can be moving upwards or downwards here in the too busy zone. Now, let's take an example. The example is we have 5 teams, A, B, C, D, and E, and we give them each a number of kind of resources points. This is not just money, it's all sorts of things, but just for the simplicity of it, it's resource points in this model. We give them each 5. Everybody's squarely in the middle of the too busy zone. Everybody gets the same amount of resources. We've used 25 points, 25 resource organization points. And what happens is next year, we drop a bit because we're not innovating, we're not changing, we're not moving forward. So we're slowly dropping. Competitors are gaining, People are, yes, they're becoming better, but technology's moving, things are happening. We're not moving, we're just kind of cruising along, and slowly things are catching up to us. So next year we have Team A has 4 points instead of 5, Team C has 4 points, Team E has 4 points. B and D still have 5 points each, but we're now down to 22 points because we're slowing a bit. Eventually we're going to hit here. We're going to hit where all the teams except D have been losing resources steadily, and Team A has now gotten to the point where they're desperate. This is when they start innovating. They may crash and burn, yes, but this is also when they start to feel that burning platform. It's not just longer hours. It's so long hours that you can't keep up with it. It's so little resources that you need to do things differently. This is when they start innovating. Now, the only problem here is you're down to 17 points, where before you had 25. That's not comfortable. That is a loss of about a third of your resource base, and that can be felt in an organization. So this is the desperation scenario. This is if you just keep things steady, they're still going to drop, and at some point you become desperate, and then you start innovating, or some people in your company start innovating. Now, what do we want instead? Instead, we want the invulnerability scenario. 9 points, 9 points, 9 points, all teams, 9 points. It's just one problem. That takes 45 points. How do you just create 20 points? You can't. They just don't appear out of thin air. So here's the suggested scenario instead. You still have your 25 points, but what you do is you move them around a little bit. So you take your team B and you turn them invulnerable. You give them extra resources. You give them extra focus. You give them time. You give them skills. You give them support. You give them what they need to get into that invulnerability zone. You give them those 9 points. Then you take Team E, preferably a team that says, we're going to take one for the team that takes one for the team. We're going to do this willingly. And you cut them down to 2, because then they're also starting to innovate, because then they're innovating out of desperation. Now, and then you take the last points that you need, you take a little bit from C and a little bit from D. Not so much that they're really going to hurt, but that they're going to be uncomfortable with it. So they'll be hanging on. Now, the nice thing about this is that the people in Team B are going to go, woohoo, we're kings of the world, we're going to do stuff, we're going to, yes, get it moving. The ones in Team E, they're going to be the ones bearing the brunt of this. But if you're really lucky, if you're really good, then you've managed to get them on board with the idea that there's some pride and they know that they're helping the bigger picture. This is in war, when you're the ones charging the gate and somebody else is doing the lap around maneuver. In parenting, when one parent says, I'm going to take the night watches, I'm going to be completely crushed by our babies pooping and wanting to eat and waking up and crying in the night. I've been that parent. I've been the night watch guy. You're the one who says, I'm going to take one for the team so you can have more resources. Now, in parenting, I think it's unfair to say that you ever get to the invulnerable point, but kind of deciding who takes the most of the beating so that the other can function a bit better and maybe go to work, or maybe just recuperate a little. That's how you get through having kids, where if you try to divide everything equally, then it just goes really badly. You sometimes need to say, I'm going to sacrifice myself, or you're going to sacrifice yourself, so that the other one can gain a little, so that the other one can get a little bit of resources back. It's no different in a company, except you're not married and there's no kids, so it's very different. But the theory, the model stuff behind it is more or less the same. Maybe, just maybe, some innovation will happen, and next year you'll have 27 points instead of 25. Is it risky? Yes, it is certainly risky. There's no doubt about that, because it might fail. Those Team E people that you have down to 2 points, they might crash, they might burn, things might go horribly wrong. The 9-point guys in Team B, maybe they're just having a great year and nothing comes out of it. But just maybe it might work. And the reason you want to do it this way is because while going from 25 to 27, it's not a certainty. It's a much longer road once you're down to 17 and your team A starts innovating to get up there again. It's so often in the history of successful companies that they have this wavy thing where things start going badly again, and then there's a crazy risk and turnaround, and then whew, because this is not a classic curve. This is what's in business plans. It's rarely what's in reality. And if it fails, don't worry. You'll get desperate in time. Thank you. Thank you for listening.